The manila folder felt heavier than it should have. I sat at my desk in the Home Office, staring at the divorce papers my lawyer had prepared 3 days ago. 23 pages that would dissolve 15 years of marriage. My hand trembled slightly as I reached for my pen, then pulled back. The house was quiet. Too quiet. It had been like this for months now. My wife moved through our home like a ghost, present but not really there. We exchanged pleasantries about groceries and bills, but the warmth had vanished. The woman who used to greet me with spontaneous hugs now flinched when I touched her shoulder. The wife who stayed up late talking with me about everything and nothing now retreated to bed before I even got home from work. I'd tried everything. Suggested date nights. She claimed she was too tired. Proposed couples therapy. She said we didn't need it. Asked directly what was wrong. She insisted everything was fine with that hollow smile that broke my heart. The distance between us had grown from inches to miles, and I was exhausted from trying to bridge a gap she seemed determined to widen. Last Tuesday marked our 15th anniversary. I'd made reservations at the restaurant where I proposed, bought her favorite flowers, and came home early. She'd forgotten completely. Not just forgotten the dinner, forgotten the day itself. She'd looked at me with confusion when I presented the bouquet, then horror when realization dawned. She'd apologized profusely, but her eyes were somewhere else, always somewhere else. That night, lying in bed with 3 feet of space between us, I'd made my decision. I couldn't live like this anymore, feeling like an unwanted roommate in my own marriage. The next morning, I called the lawyer. Now those papers sat before me, waiting for my signature. Once I signed, I'd present them to her. A clean break. We'd split assets, figure out custody of our old dog, and move on with our separate lives. It seemed inevitable. I heard her moving around downstairs. She worked from home now, rarely leaving the house. Another change that had happened gradually over the past year. She'd left her office job, claiming she wanted more flexibility, but I suspected it was something else. She'd become increasingly anxious about being in public, though she denied it when I asked. My phone buzzed, a text from my best friend asking if I wanted to grab drinks. I declined. I needed to do this tonight. Sign the papers, tell her we needed to talk, and end this slow death of our marriage. Surely she'd be relieved. Maybe she'd already checked out emotionally and was just waiting for me to make it official. I stood up, leaving the papers on the desk, and went to take a shower. The hot water did nothing to ease the knot in my chest. 15 years. We'd built a life together, bought this house, adopted that ridiculous dog, weathered job losses and family deaths. We'd talked about kids but agreed to wait until we were ready. Now we'd never have that chance. When did it all go wrong? I kept replaying our history, searching for the moment everything shifted. Was it when she started her new job 2 years ago? No. She'd seemed happy then. Maybe when her mother died 18 months ago. But she'd grieved and seemed to recover. The distance had crept in more recently, maybe 6 or 7 months ago. Slowly at first, then rapidly accelerating until we arrived at this moment, me preparing to leave the woman I still loved but couldn't reach. As I dried off and got dressed, I heard her voice downstairs. She was on the phone, probably a work call. Her voice carried up through the old house's thin floors, though I couldn't make out the words. I grabbed the folder and headed downstairs, my heart pounding. The study door was partially open, and her voice became clearer. But something in her tone made me pause at the bottom of the stairs. She wasn't using her professional voice. She was crying. I stood frozen in the hallway, the folder gripped in my hand. Through the crack in the study door, I could see my wife sitting at her desk, her back to me, shoulders shaking. She was on a video call. I could hear multiple female voices coming through her speakers. "I know you guys think I should just talk to him," she said, her voice thick with tears. "But I can't. I can't bear to see the look on his face when I tell him what a mess I am." One of her friends spoke up. I recognized the voice as belonging to Sarah, her college roommate. "He loves you. He's not going to judge you." "You don't understand," my wife said, and the raw pain in her voice made my chest tighten. "He fell in love with someone confident and happy. Someone who wasn't broken. I'm not that person anymore, and I don't know how to tell him that the woman he married doesn't exist." I should have walked away. This was clearly a private conversation. But I couldn't move. The folder slipped slightly in my sweating palm. When did it start? Another voice asked, her friend Jessica. My wife was quiet for a moment. About 8 months ago. I was coming home from work, taking the subway like always. This man, he followed me off the train. Started walking behind me, saying things. Disgusting things. I tried to walk faster, but he stayed with me for 4 blocks, describing what he wanted to do to me. My blood ran cold. She'd never mentioned this. I finally made it to our street and he backed off. But I felt so violated, so scared. And the worst part, I couldn't tell my husband. He would have been furious, would have wanted to report it, make a big deal. I just wanted to forget it happened. That wasn't your fault, Sarah said firmly. I know that logically, my wife continued. But it changed something in me. I started getting nervous on the subway. Then nervous walking anywhere alone. I began working from home because I was having panic attacks on my commute. And I couldn't tell him the real reason because then I'd have to explain everything. She took a shaky breath. It got worse. I'd look at him and see this man who was strong and confident and normal, and I felt like such a failure. Like I was defective. He'd try to touch me, and I'd think about that man's hands grabbing my arm, and I'd pull away. Not because of my husband, because of what that stranger made me feel about myself. The folder was shaking in my hand now. How had I not known? How had I let her suffer alone? I withdrew from everything, she said. From work, from friends, from him. Especially from him. Because he was the one person I couldn't disappoint. The one person whose opinion mattered most. And I was so ashamed that I let one horrible stranger destroy my confidence, my sense of safety, my entire life. You didn't let him do anything, Jessica interjected. This is trauma. You need to talk to someone professional about this. I know, my wife said softly. I finally called a therapist last week. My first appointment is Tuesday. But it might be too late. What do you mean? Sarah asked. My wife's voice broke completely. He's going to leave me. I know he is. He came home early on our anniversary that I completely forgot because I've been so lost in my own head, with flowers and this hopeful look on his face. And I saw it die when he realized I'd forgotten. I'm losing him, and it's my own fault. Have you told him any of this? Jessica asked. No, my wife whispered. How can I? How do I look at the man I love and tell him I'm not the person he married anymore? That I'm scared of shadows? That I can barely function some days? He deserves someone whole, not someone who falls apart over a stranger's words. That's not fair to him, Sarah said gently. You're not giving him the chance to support you. Because he shouldn't have to, my wife cried out. He signed up for a partner, an equal. Not a project. Not someone who needs to be fixed. I see how tired he looks, how sad. I'm doing that to him. I'm the problem, and I don't know how to stop being the problem. There was a long pause. When my wife spoke again, her voice was barely audible. I love him so much it physically hurts. But I think the kindest thing I can do is let him go before I drag him down further. He hasn't said anything, but I can feel him pulling away. He's probably already planning his exit. And maybe that's what I deserve for being too weak to overcome this. I backed away from the door silently, my mind reeling. The folder slipped from my fingers and scattered papers across the hallway floor. I didn't pick them up. Instead, I walked mechanically to the living room and sank onto the couch, my wife's words echoing in my head. 8 months. She'd been suffering for 8 months, and I'd been so wrapped up in my own hurt feelings that I'd completely missed it. No, worse than that. I'd interpreted her trauma response as rejection, her withdrawal as indifference, her fear as a lack of love. The woman I'd been planning to divorce wasn't cold or uncaring. She was terrified and ashamed, drowning in trauma she didn't know how to voice. And instead of throwing her a lifeline, I'd been mentally packing my bags. I thought back over the past months with this new context. The way she'd started checking the locks obsessively, I'd found it annoying. The way she'd asked me to pick her up from places instead of taking the subway, I'd thought she was being demanding. The way she'd stiffened when I touched her without warning, I'd taken it personally, as rejection. All of it made horrible, perfect sense now. I heard her call ending, her voice saying goodbye to her friends. Then silence. I sat there, trying to figure out what to do. Confront her? Pretend I hadn't heard? The divorce papers were still scattered in the hallway. I needed to clean those up before she saw them and confirmed her worst fears. But I couldn't move. I felt like someone had reached into my chest and rearranged everything I thought I knew. The marriage I thought was dying had actually been suffocating under the weight of unspoken trauma. The wife I thought had stopped loving me loved me so much she was willing to let me go rather than burden me with her pain. "Are you okay?" I looked up to find her standing in the doorway, her eyes red from crying, her face pale. She'd noticed the papers scattered in the hall. She was holding one, and I watched her face as she read the header, "Petition for Dissolution of Marriage." The color drained from her face entirely. She looked at me, and I saw every fear she'd just expressed to her friends reflected in her eyes. "So it's real," she whispered. "You're really leaving." I should have said something immediately. Told her to wait, to sit down, that we needed to talk. But my throat had closed up, and she interpreted my silence as confirmation. "Of course you are," she said, her voice hollow. "I don't blame you. I've been terrible. You deserve so much better than what I've given you." She set the paper down carefully, her hands shaking. "I'll make this easy for you. I won't fight it. Whatever you want, it's yours." "That's not," I finally managed to speak, but she cut me off. "Please don't apologize. You don't owe me anything. I'm the one who should apologize. I ruined everything, and I don't even have a good excuse. You tried so hard, and I just kept pushing you away, and now." She wrapped her arms around herself, and I recognized it now for what it was, a protective gesture, like she was literally trying to hold herself together. "Sit down," I said, finding my voice. "Please." She hesitated, then perched on the edge of the armchair across from me, looking like she might bolt at any moment. She wouldn't meet my eyes. "I need to tell you something," I began, not sure how to navigate this. "And I need you to listen. Can you do that?" She nodded, still not looking at me. "I wasn't planning to ambush you with those papers. I was going to talk to you first. But before I could, I overheard your conversation. With Sarah and Jessica." Her head snapped up, eyes wide with horror. "You heard," she stood abruptly. "How much did you hear?" "Enough," I said quietly. "About the man who followed you. About the panic attacks. About why you've been pulling away." She turned her back to me, and I could see her shoulders begin to shake. "Then you know what a mess I am. This just makes it easier, right? Now you have real reasons instead of just being tired of me." "That's not what I'm thinking at all," I said, standing up and taking a step toward her. She moved away, maintaining the distance. "Don't," she said. "Don't pity me. I can't handle that on top of everything else." "I don't pity you," I said firmly. "I'm angry." She turned to look at me, confusion replacing some of the fear on her face. "I'm angry," I repeated, "that you've been dealing with this alone. I'm angry that some piece of garbage traumatized you and you felt like you couldn't tell me. I'm angry at myself for being so caught up in my own hurt that I didn't see you were drowning." Tears were streaming down her face now. "You're not supposed to have to deal with this. That's the whole point. You married someone strong and capable, and I'm neither of those things anymore." "Stop," I said, more forcefully than I intended. She flinched, and I immediately softened my tone. "I'm sorry. I didn't mean to yell. But please stop telling me who I married and what I signed up for. I married you. All of you. The strong parts and the scared parts and the parts that are still figuring things out." "You don't understand," she said, her voice breaking. "I can't even take the subway anymore. I check the locks 5 times before bed. I have nightmares about being followed. I forgot our anniversary because I was having a panic attack in the bathroom for an hour before you got home. This isn't temporary. This is who I am now, and it's not fair to you. I moved closer, slowly, giving her time to move away if she needed to. She didn't. When we got married, we made vows. Do you remember them? She nodded hesitantly. We promised for better or worse. In sickness and in health. I meant those words. This, what you're going through, this is the worst part. This is the sickness part. Not physical sickness, but trauma is real and it's not your fault and it doesn't make you broken. But I can't be what you need, she whispered. What I need, I said, now standing directly in front of her, is honesty. What I need is for you to stop protecting me from your pain. What I need is my wife back, not the woman you think you should be, but the actual person you are right now, scared and traumatized and trying her best. She looked up at me, and I saw 15 years of love and trust and fear and shame all tangled together in her eyes. I don't know how to let you in. I've spent so long trying to keep it together, trying not to fall apart in front of you. Then fall apart, I said. I'm right here. I'll catch you. Something broke in her then. She collapsed forward, and I caught her, wrapping my arms around her as she sobbed into my chest. Her whole body shook with the force of her crying, months of held-back emotion finally finding release. I'm so sorry, she gasped between sobs. I'm so sorry I shut you out. I'm sorry I forgot our anniversary. I'm sorry I made you feel unloved when I love you so much I can't breathe sometimes. I'm sorry too, I said into her hair. I'm sorry I didn't see what was happening. I'm sorry I let my ego get in the way of seeing your pain. I'm sorry I thought divorce was the answer instead of just asking you what was wrong. We stood like that for a long time, her crying and me holding her, both of us releasing months of accumulated hurt and misunderstanding. When her sobs finally quieted to hiccups, she pulled back slightly to look at me. I started therapy, she said. My first appointment is Tuesday. I should have done it months ago, but I kept thinking I could handle it myself. That I could fix myself before you noticed how broken I was. You're not broken, I insisted. You're traumatized. There's a difference. And you don't have to fix yourself alone. That's what I'm here for. She shook her head. It's not your responsibility to fix me. You're right, I agreed. I can't fix you. Only you can heal from this, with professional help. But I can support you while you do. I can be patient when you're having a bad day. I can pick you up when you need a ride. I can hold you when you have nightmares. That's not fixing, that's loving. What about those papers? She asked, glancing back toward the hallway. I turned her face back to me gently. Those papers were written by a man who thought his wife didn't love him anymore. By a man who didn't understand what was happening. I'm not that man anymore. Not after tonight. So you're not leaving? The hope in her voice was fragile, tentative. No, I said firmly. I'm not leaving. But things need to change. We need to change. We need to actually talk to each other. She nodded. I don't know how to do this. How to be vulnerable like this. I've spent so long trying to appear fine. Then we figure it out together, I said. Starting now. Tell me about that day. The day that man followed you. Tell me everything. She took a shaky breath. It's hard to talk about. I know. But keeping it inside has been eating you alive. Let me help you carry it. We moved to the couch, sitting close together, her hand in mine. And slowly, haltingly, she began to tell me everything. We talked until 3 in the morning. She told me about the man on the subway in vivid, painful detail, things she'd been replaying in her mind for months but had never spoken aloud. She told me about the panic attacks that started shortly after, how she'd be fine one moment and drowning in anxiety the next. She explained how the shame had layered on top of the fear, how she'd felt weak for not getting over it. I kept thinking I should be stronger, she said at one point. One bad interaction shouldn't have this much power over me. But it does, and that makes me feel even worse. Trauma doesn't follow a logical timeline, I said, repeating something I'd read once. You can't shame yourself into healing faster. She leaned against me, exhausted from crying and talking. I was so scared you'd see me differently. Like I was damaged goods. I do see you differently now, I admitted, and felt her tense. I see how much strength it took to keep going every day while dealing with this. I see how much you were trying to protect me, even when it hurt you. I see someone who's been fighting a battle I didn't even know was happening. She was quiet for a moment. I really did forget our anniversary. Not because it wasn't important, but because I was having a full-blown panic attack and couldn't think about anything else. When you came home with those flowers and I realized what day it was, I wanted to disappear. I thought you didn't care anymore, I confessed. I thought you'd checked out of our marriage. I was trying to check out of my own existence, she said softly. It wasn't about you. It was never about you. You were the one good thing in my life, and I was terrified of contaminating that with all my fear and anxiety. We sat in silence for a while, processing everything that had been said. Finally, I asked the question that had been bothering me. Why didn't you tell me? Not right after it happened, I understand being in shock, but in the weeks and months after. She thought about it carefully. At first, I genuinely thought I could handle it. That it would fade. When it didn't, and things got worse, I was already in too deep. I'd been hiding it for so long that admitting it felt impossible. And you seemed so unaffected by everything. So normal. I felt like I'd be pulling you down into my mess. I'm your husband, I said. Your mess is my mess. That's how this works. I know that now, she said. Or at least, I'm starting to understand it. My therapist, I had a consultation call last week. She said that trauma often makes people isolate themselves. That it's a common response to feel like you have to handle everything alone. What else did she say? I asked. That healing isn't linear. That there will be good days and bad days. That the people who love you can't fix you, but their support makes the journey easier. She looked up at me. I didn't believe her when she said you'd want to support me. I thought she was being naive. And now I'm starting to think maybe I was the naive one. For thinking I had to be perfect to be worthy of love. Over the next few hours, we made plans. She would continue with therapy. I offered to go to some sessions with her if her therapist thought it would help. I would educate myself about trauma and PTSD. We would establish better communication, including a signal she could use when she was feeling overwhelmed. I would be more observant, and she would be more honest, even when honesty felt scary. I can't promise I'll be fixed quickly, she warned. This might take a long time. I'm not going anywhere, I assured her. We'll take as long as it takes. When the sun started to rise, we were still on the couch, tangled together, emotionally exhausted but somehow lighter than we'd been in months. I thought about the divorce papers still scattered in the hallway and realized how close I'd come to making the biggest mistake of my life. I need to tell you something, she said quietly. Something I heard you tell your friend a few weeks ago. I tensed, trying to remember what I might have said. You were on the phone in the garage. You told him you felt like a ghost in your own marriage. That you were tired of trying. She looked at me with tears in her eyes. You were right. I made you feel that way, and I'm so sorry. We made each other feel invisible, I said. Both of us retreating into our own pain. But we see each other now. What do we do with those papers? She asked. I thought about it. We could burn them. Make a symbolic gesture. She managed a small smile. That seems dramatic. Or, I said, we could keep them. As a reminder of what almost happened. Of what we almost lost because we stopped communicating. That seems depressing. Motivating, I corrected. Every time we're tempted to shut each other out, we remember those papers and we remember this night. She considered it, then nodded. Okay, but we should probably pick them up off the floor. We gathered the papers together, and I tucked them away in my office drawer. Then we went upstairs and crawled into bed, something we hadn't done together in months. She curled into me, and for the first time in a long time, the space between us felt bridged. "Thank you," she whispered as we were both drifting off. "For what?" "For listening. For staying. For loving the messy version of me." "That's the only version there is," I said. "We're all messy. We just hide it better some days than others." The road ahead wasn't easy. Her first therapy session brought up difficult emotions. There were days when she couldn't get out of bed, when the anxiety was too overwhelming. There were setbacks and struggles and moments when we both felt lost. But there were also victories. The first time she took the subway again, with me by her side. The day she laughed, really laughed, for the first time in months. The evening she initiated a hug instead of waiting for me to reach out first. Small moments that added up to healing. 6 months later, we celebrated our anniversary again. This time, we both remembered. We went to that same restaurant, and over dinner, she told me how far she'd come. How she was learning to be gentle with herself. How therapy was helping her understand that trauma didn't define her worth. "I still have bad days," she admitted. "Days when I want to hide from everything and everyone." "That's okay," I said. "I'll be here on the bad days and the good days." She reached across the table and took my hand. "I know. And that makes all the difference." We'd come so close to losing everything because we'd forgotten the most fundamental truth of marriage. You're supposed to face the hard things together. Not alone. Not in silence. Together. The divorce papers stayed in my drawer, a reminder of what we'd overcome. But we never looked at them again. We didn't need to. We'd written a different ending to our story, one where love meant staying, even when staying was hard. Especially when staying was hard. And that made all the difference.